And we're live. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a Grain of Salt podcast. I'm Ethan. This is Jackson. And this week we're talking interesting sports stories.
Sports.
It's in the game.
I think the main thing we're trying to get across here, right, is that it's more than just a game.
For sure. Yeah. When people look at sports stories, they're only really interested in them if they're interested in the particular sport, right?
Yep.
But obviously there can be more involved with that. It can be politics. It can be social history. It can be more than just a sport.
Absolutely. These are people's livelihoods, and these stories actually have an historical impact, and some of them actually are quite crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think nothing describes that better than my first story, which I know you know a little bit about.
I watched the movie.
Exactly. I'm sure there's probably a few people out there that have watched the same thing. There's a couple of movies that have come out over the past 20 years or so. But Jessie Owens and the 1936 Olympics. So Jessie was a black runner who set 3 world records in 1935, the year before the Olympics, in a span of 45 minutes. And he went on, he was known for really the 100 meter, 200 meter, and the long jump especially, but he also did the relay. And those 3 world records that he had set became known as the greatest 45 minutes in sports history. So he obviously qualified for the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. And obviously, as we know, the 30s in Germany were super politicized. There were really extreme politics, extreme fascism.
Hitler was in power, right?
Yeah, 4 years before Hitler was put into power. So, and obviously you can see how a black man would not exactly be the popular choice to go to represent the United States, either from the American perspective or sending him into a fascist country.
Right. I actually remember in the movie they kept deliberating over whether or not the Americans should even go to Germany, as they were hearing rumors at that point of prejudice against Jews.
Yeah, exactly. The prejudice against the Jews kind of started in 1934. So in the 36 Olympics, they had to de-escalate everything, even to be considered to host them. And obviously the Olympics, from Hitler's perspective, were kind of just to promote Nazi Germany as the greatest of all countries.
Right.
So to de-escalate his own views on the Jewish peoples and even African American peoples, it was significant. But Jessie, so he set the 3 world records, and he actually made the team. He went to Germany, and in 1936, Adi Dassler, who you might know as the original founder of Adidas, he signed Jessie to a shoe endorsement. Basically said that, well, you'll win this race you'll win your races if you wear Adidas shoes. It wasn't called Adidas then, but he went on to make the company in the 40s.
Right.
So that was actually the first shoe endorsement deal for any black American athlete.
Wow.
Yeah, and it happened in Nazi Germany in the 30s.
Any idea how much he got paid?
I honestly couldn't tell you. The money thing to deal with the Olympics, because it's amateur, you couldn't really say how much money you were getting, because that kind of reduces the whole purpose of being an amateur athlete.
Yeah, the Olympic Committee would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So 1936, I think August 1st, the Olympics began, and Jessie ran the 100 meter that day, and he didn't set a world record, but he did win the race, and he won for the qualifying rounds, so he made the finals. And so Hitler actually, he wanted to congratulate only the German victors, for obvious reasons, super nationalist in Nazi Germany. And his the promotionary person for the Olympics, I think it was Heinrich Himmler actually, he basically said you can either congratulate all of the victors or you can congratulate none of the victors.
Himmler was American, right?
No, he was German.
He was German?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was the person in charge of all the publications for the German Olympic events and the Olympic news. So he promoted that he should either congratulate everyone or no one. And so when everyone says that Jessie wasn't congratulated after his race, it was because none of the athletes were congratulated, because Hitler decided that he just didn't want to congratulate anyone, because there were actually Jewish people on the American sports teams as well.
Right.
So he didn't want to be a part of that. So then the long jump events happened on August 14th. The 14th and the 15th are when the Olympics ended. And that was really when like the finals went on and when Jessie's conspiracies kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
So in the long jump, it was Jessie against Lose Long, which is a hilarious sports name, especially considering that his event was long jump.
Yeah, let's just break that down. So first name,
Yeah.
Lose.
Yeah.
Not great for an Olympic athlete.
I think it was actually Franz Lose Long, but he went by Lose for whatever reason.
Well, maybe ironic, kind of taking your weakness. Maybe got made fun of as a kid.
Yeah, maybe.
And making that his strength. Maybe there's a bit of a story back there. And then Lawn, also hilarious that he's in lawn jump.
Yeah, he was destined for greatness there, or second place greatness, to spoil the story.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, sorry. But so he actually helps Jessie out. He gives him a little tip, supposedly, because Jessie's first two jumps were apparently over the line. So for long jump, you have to jump from behind the line in order for it to count. And the Germans kept disqualifying Jessie's jumps because they were just over the line. Mm. And so in the movie, I'm sure you remember this, it's kind of the big infamous moment that the German helps Jessie out and puts something just behind the line, just so Jessie can qualify for the third jump.
So he's jumping like a couple inches before the line that everyone else is jumping on, right?
Yeah.
So he's actually putting himself at a disadvantage almost just to get qualified.
Yeah.
I remember in the movie, they kind of implied that the judges were a little corrupt there and they were calling him out for false starts. I'm not sure if that's maybe just, a movie or...
Yeah, it's kind of weird because the event between Lose Long and Jessie, apparently it actually never happened. Apparently Jessie didn't meet his competitor until like after the games. And then they shook hands and like they congratulate each other on first and second place.
Still, for a German athlete to shake hands with the victor of another country who's black, and obviously Hitler's a very hateful person, in front of Hitler when he's got all this power.
Yeah. So that's, exactly. It kind of...
Kudos.
Exactly. So after the events, they shake hands and all goes well. And so Jessie wins 4 gold medals, which is still a U.S. record. Or world record, actually, for gold medals in an Olympics. So it was 100 meter, 200 meter long jump, and he was part of the relay team that won the gold medal in Germany. And so the conspiracy is that, like, Hitler didn't congratulate Jessie at all. But that's actually not the case. Supposedly, Hitler did, in Jessie's words, he saluted him. So I'm guessing probably not the same kind of salute that we're thinking of.
Yeah.
And apparently he also had like a commemorative cabinet with like the inscription of like 1936 Olympics gold medal holder. And supposedly the US president in 1936, which is, who was president in 1936?
1936.
FDR. That's what
I was
it would have been, FDR in his first term. And apparently he didn't invite Jessie to the White House. So Hitler congratulated Jessie after his gold medals, but the U.S. president didn't.
Okay, so he's not only being discriminated against by Hitler, which, as terrible as you expect, he's also getting it back home as well.
Mm-hmm. So apparently it was more so back home. And so when he returns, he's in the victory parade, and apparently someone gave him $10,000 cash just in a bag. Like during the parade, someone, like Jessie's in the back of a car, and they throw a bag of something into the car. And you would assume that would incite panic or a riot of some sort.
Yeah.
And just for the sake of not making a commotion, Jessie didn't protest or whatever. He waited until the end of the parade, and then he opened it up, and it was $10,000 cash. In congratulations.
Oh my! He just opened it up by himself.
Yeah.
Because someone throws a bag in my car. I don't think they're being nice. I think maybe
it's a bomb, some sort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because you're an African American who's going on to represent United States, and obviously there's not the public oppression like there is in the '60s, where it became really widespread known that the U.S. is oppressing Black Americans. But still, you wouldn't open it, right?
Right. Yeah, and he was getting it from all sides. Like, I don't want to keep bringing up the movie when you've done all this great research, but I do remember an aspect of the movie was that a lot of people in like the African American community at the time were saying that you shouldn't go to the Olympics as a form of like protest, because the civil rights movement was really picking up steam there, and it would
Exactly.
have been pretty huge for him not to go and kind of throw away his own opportunity.
Yeah, it was kind of like the decision for him to be either a black man or an American. Like
Right.
that was kind of his choice to make before. Unfortunately, the gold medals and that was kind of the peak of his career. Because after that, he went on to be the president of the Portland Rosebuds, a baseball team in the West Coast Negro Baseballs League. And during between games, he would race horses, just to try and make money. And in his words, he said, "Oh, well, I got to race horses because I can't eat my 4 gold medals."
Oh, so he was
Struggling after.
even with the shoe deal.
Yeah.
Even with I assume they boarded him and they didn't really pay him.
Yeah, well, the shoe deal actually only went on during the Olympics. Like he was paid to wear those shoes during the Olympics, but then after that, that was it.
I do have to ask, when you say race horses, is he like a jockey or is he betting?
No, he's physically racing horses on foot.
He is racing horses.
Yeah.
But he's not winning, right?
No.
Because
it's a horse. Yeah, you're not gonna beat a horse.
Yeah, obviously, but I mean, I don't know. That guy was an incredible athlete. I remember seeing videos of him jumping, and it completely revolutionized what I thought humans could do.
Yeah, well, he's 6 inches shorter than Usain Bolt, and his time for the 100 meter is actually still less than half a second behind Usain Bolt.
And long legs are important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Usain Bolt's almost 7 feet tall. And clearly the greatest runner ever. And this is 70 years, 80 years before Usain Bolt.
Wow.
So unfortunately, throughout the 60s, after this baseball league folds, Jesse goes on to file bankruptcy, and he ends up running a gas station and a dry cleaning business in his hometown in New York. And that's kind of unfortunately the end of his story. It was the peak of greatness, and he tried to decide to be American or a black man, and he chose to be American, represent his country. And obviously he did show Hitler kind of who's the boss there. Even if the Germans won more gold medals, that was kind of the moment that stood out in those Olympics.
Yeah, for all Hitler's talk about how the German race is superior and everything,
exactly,
that's got a sting.
Yeah.
I will say though, he filed for bankruptcy,
and
then he bounced back from that. He ran a convenience store and dry clean business. That's
you
own businesses.
Yeah, it was obviously it's tough, especially because at that point it's in the 1960s. And as we know, in the 1960s in America, like I said, that's the pinnacle of publicized oppression.
Yeah, there's a lot of police brutality.
Yeah,
and civil rights movements fighting against it.
Yeah, but I mean, he was labeled the 6th greatest athlete in the 20th century by Sports Illustrated, Bleacher Report. There was a bunch of different articles.
That'd be the 6th greatest American athlete, right?
Yeah, in American sports.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
yeah,
whether it be
I
team sports or not. So.
Yeah, pretty ridiculous when you think he came from a poor family, didn't really have every advantage that today's athletes are engineered to do well, right?
Exactly. And his record stood for his 100-meter record stood for 30 years after. His long jump record stood for 25 years after at the Olympic level. So obviously, as a black American and just a black man in general, you're speaking volumes to what you can do. And
yeah, I honestly
behind it.
I really believe that those records stood, because if you go on YouTube right now and you type in Jessie Owens jumping, it's incredible.
It is.
I guess if you watch any lawn jump, I feel people kind of sleep on the lawn jump event.
Yeah.
And it's how are these people they're swimming?
They look like
they're
flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're running, they get steps in while they're flying through. It's insane.
I think it's from 1985. That was the first movie that came out with him. But that's all. That's kind of where I'm gonna finish. Is if you could check out any movie about him, check out the 1985 version of his movie, because they actually cut footage of his long jumping into the movie. So obviously you have the dramatized story of it, but then they actually have the actual athletic feats behind it, and it shows how great it is.
To be fair, with the new movie, they have Jason Sudeikis, though, right?
That is true.
As a coach, he's pretty great as that.
Fair.
So.
Yeah, for sure. But you had a story about politics and sports and stuff as well with the water polo match, right?
Something about an athlete overcoming a dictatorship country. This is really not well known. But honestly, you can make a movie on it. It's just, I mean, it's like Miracle on Ice, like where, the Americans overcome the Russians, or the underdogs of the story. This was Hungary versus Russia in the water polo match, except with a way better narrative behind it, a way better like political history to go with it, and current events at the time happening. It was a fight between nations.
It's just water polo.
It was just water polo, so you're never gonna see a movie.
I don't even know how to play water polo.
You're in a pool, you're swimming around, you're throwing a ball. You can look it up if you want. But what's really interesting is the political landscape around it. So this is 1950s. So the Soviet Union is occupying Hungary right now. And they have a one-party rule. They've implemented communism, and they've removed the Hungarian leader, whose name was Emir Nagy. I don't actually know. It's Nagy, but I don't think that's how you pronounce it. I don't think it's Nagy.
Nagy.
Yeah, but I'm gonna call him Nagy because what happens next works for that.
Sure.
You'll see what I mean in just a moment. Essentially, so 1956. Olympics are happening, and first of all, 1952, Hungary has won, so they're the team to beat at this point.
Okay.
But between 1952 and the 1956 Olympics, there's been Hungarian revolts against their Soviet occupation. So with all these revolts happening, the Soviet Union's first, fix for it is to bring back Emir Nagy into power, to appease them, and give them a familiar face. So Emir Nagy gets back into power, and he does some great stuff with it. He demands that the Soviet pull their military out of Hungary because revolts were happening. They were ready to suppress anything, but just to calm everything down, roll back the tanks, bring them back to Russia, take the military out of Hungary. Soviets oblige. It's looking good. Then Emir Nagy makes another request. And well, it's not actually much of a request. Essentially, he seeks to abolish the one-party rule. So he's looking to bring back democratic.
So just not communism.
Not communism.
At all.
So this was a problem.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, he also announced that Hungary would be pulling out of the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact would be Soviet Union's version of NATO.
Yeah. Again, basically, like, the only other thing that makes a country communist at that point is like the one-party system and the Warsaw Pact.
Exactly. So after these two announcements, Soviet Union's had enough. They send the tanks in. And Emir Nagy gets on TV and makes this 35-second broadcast and says, our troops are fighting. They're trying to hold them off. And then he flees to Budapest to wait it out. He's later caught, and he's executed 2 years later, unfortunately.
Damn, just for like treason against communism kind of thing, or?
Yeah, I assume so.
Fair. I mean, it's Stalin. You didn't really need a reason to get executed at that point.
Yeah. I think pulling out of the Warsaw Pact was the final straw for him. So that's the way it went. So that all happens in 1956, and during this revolt, where the Soviets come back, bring their army back in, you have 2,500 Hungarians die. And then you have 200,000 that flee the country totally.
Damn.
Yeah, so this is a big loss.
Wait, them. Sorry, how many died?
2,500. 2,500.
Okay. Yeah. So.
And then.
Damn. Okay, not to compare it to like more modern events, but like basically just less than like 9/11. Like 9/11 was like 3,000 people, 3,300 people.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Hard to compare though, right?
For sure. Yeah, it's not the same thing at all. I just mean to make it more of a.
And then 200,000 flee the country. They completely abandon it. And all these Hungarians are pissed off at the United States because the United States has been going on TV and saying we need to help these Hungarians and making a lot of nice speeches. But the intervention that they promised, they did not deliver on that day. Anyway, so this is the political landscape we have. Moving on to the 1956 Summer Olympics. It's the semifinals. It's Hungary versus Russia. And there's thousands of Hungarian supporters in the stands and, of the international committee too.
Yeah.
International community too. But thousands of Hungarian supporters in the stands. This is their sport. This is where they win gold. And so they get up nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's minutes left in the game. So it looks like they've won. Everything's going great. This is a hard-fought game, by the way, obviously.
Yeah.
And it gets a little out of hand when a Soviet player headbutts a Hungarian player. And an American spectator said he witnessed it, and it was clear there was no intention to harm.
I was just about to say, does it look intentional? Is there footage of this, or?
Well, the Hungarian player goes down into the water. He rises back up, and he's cut over his eye, and blood is pouring from this. And it's going into the water, so you see the red, and all these spectators see this,
Mm-hmm.
and they start seeing red too. And the players absolutely lose it. It becomes an all-out fist fight between the Russian and Hungarian players. These are guys, by the way, in a pool that's like a deep pool. So like there's danger here because like they could drown each other.
Easily drown.
They're having a fist fight in water. So chaos is happening in the pool, but security doesn't have time to deal with that. That's the ref's job, which by the way, there's only like 1 or 2 refs.
Good. That's what you need.
Against the whole team. So they're really not doing anything, right? But the spectators are the problem. Because thousands of these Hungarians see the blood in the water, and it's chaos. It's an uproar. So security tries to hold them off from like jumping in the pool and tearing apart these Russian
trying
players.
to rush it, obviously, yeah.
And they hold them off enough so that the police get there. They go in full riot squad gear,
Mm-hmm.
and they disperse the crowd. And the entire time, this pool is just an all-out brawl still. And they don't stop brawling until the entire police force surrounds the pool, like every inch, just so they can't escape anywhere. And then, everyone's like, okay.
Like, there's nothing you can literally do at that point.
Yeah.
So
I obviously, the fight's the big part of this story, but you might be wondering, what do you do in this situation when a match hasn't been finished?
Mm-hmm.
The Soviet Union requests a rematch. They're denied.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Let's put him back in a pool.
And this is the International Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
They're trying to negotiate tensions between countries that have sport.
Mm-hmm.
So with the semifinal match unfinished, but the Hungarian team being up 4 points, they give the Hungarians the gold. And Yugoslavia, who won their semifinal match in the other
Mm-hmm.
pool, gets silver, and then the Russians are left with bronze. So it's a nice wrap up because it's a huge triumph for the Hungarians.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is they were waving their national flag the whole time against the wishes of their country's leaders. They didn't want them to fly their independent Hungarian flag because they were still occupied by the Soviets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you could only fly the flag of the Soviet Union pretty much.
Yeah. So the athletes made this decision to proclaim their nationalism, leave it all out there on the pool. And when things got rough, they did not back down.
Obviously, there's nothing like that now, but that is ballsy.
Right.
To just I don't know how big a water polo team is, even if it's like 12 guys or something. To have 12 guys in a country of like millions of people to just choose to just do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a fight in a pool, you would think maybe a little silly, but these guys are athletes.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to drown someone. Anyway, no one was really hurt too bad. So it was really just a triumph for the Hungarians, and that's the end of the story.
Wow. Well, again, kind of not exactly the most satisfying ending, seeing as they don't have like the big triumphant finish after that. I mean, Soviet Union falls and stuff.
They were beating them in the game, and then they got to kick their ass.
Yeah.
So what more could you ask for?
Yeah.
They got the gold. To me, it's a nice wrap up.
The Olympics should kind of just take it easy with stuff like that. There's so much nationalism in the Olympics and stuff. There's no brawls anymore, but still it's
it's impossible to keep out of it.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning, it's more than just a game.
For sure, especially with that. That's a good example of that.
Yep.
Unfortunately, my second story rather, it doesn't really flow with the whole politics in sports, but again, that's kind of what we're going for here is the diversity in sports and how important different sports stories can be to different demographics. So this story is about Rosie Ruiz. You probably haven't heard of her. She's not very well known for a couple reasons that I'll get into. She was a Cuban American who grew up in Florida. She was born in the 50s, moved to New York in the 1970s. And in the late 1970s, she started to get into running. And in the 1979 New York Marathon, she tries to enroll in the marathon, but she was late to the application period. So fortunately, they let her run because she was dying of brain cancer. And so one of her dying wishes was that she wanted to run this marathon and prove that she could do it. So she runs the marathon, and she finishes with a time of like 2 hours, 56 minutes, I think, which it's like 3 hours and 15 minutes for like the qualifying time at the New York Marathon to make the Boston Marathon. So she made it totally fine. The thing was, at the end of the race, she had someone accompany her from the subway station to the finish line because she said that she had a leg injury. So they said like, oh, well, you're here in 2 hours and 56 minutes, even if you didn't really run the end of it because of your injury, we're going to allow it. It was like volunteer people working at the marathon. So they just said like, whatever, it's not a big deal. You were one of the people that said that you're dying of brain cancer. So obviously we're going to let you run the next marathon.
I like that. That's a great attitude to have.
Yeah, exactly. So like kind of promotes like pushing forward, whatever. She's had like a couple injuries and stuff now. So then that was like October 1979. So then the Boston Marathon is April 1980. And so the marathon goes on. It goes by a couple of universities in Boston. It's not Harvard. I actually couldn't tell you what the university was. But regardless, she actually finishes the marathon in first place with a time of 2 hours and 31 minutes. So a 25-minute improvement in like 6 months time training.
Yeah, 42 kilometers in 2 hours and 31 minutes.
31 minutes, yeah.
That's incredible.
And so that's there's kind of dispute about like whether or not that was either the fastest or the third fastest female time in history. There's different times on it. I think it's just like issues with the clocks and stuff over the years.
Oh.
But regardless, so she wins, and right after the race, they're congratulating her. And they ask her like, oh, you have such a big improvement. What, did you do a lot of like interval training? Who's your trainer? And she says, what is interval training? And no, I train myself. And there's also no footage of her actually running the first 41 and a half miles of that.
Well, were they filming the whole race?
Yeah. So like there's different like photographers along the way, and there was no sightings of her whatsoever.
Oh.
And then she's asked, what did you find interesting about the college in Boston that when you were passing there? What stood out to you? And she said, oh, like nothing really. Like I find it interesting running through like collegiate areas, but nothing really stood out.
That doesn't really surprise me. I'd be like, I'm focused on running a marathon.
For sure. But the one thing about the Boston Marathon in 1980 was that there was thousands of students just like out front cheering on the racers or the runners in the marathon. So usually like when the winners were asked about that, they said like, oh, it was great to have such support. It was cool to have such a big turnout, whatever. And she just didn't mention it at all. And then she just didn't really seem to know anything about the running whatsoever. So then obviously an investigation starts going on about like if she kind of cheated or if she jumped out or whatever. And there was two people at the college that said that she jumped out from like a big crowd at about like the 41 mile mark, and said that like they saw her jump out of a large crowd and start running then. Obviously this is two eyewitnesses and it's like a city full of people. Like two people are probably just
it would have been the 24 mile mark, right?
Yeah,
because it's like I think 26 miles is how long
42 kilometers, 26 miles.
Right. Okay.
So
last mile,
in the last mile, she jumps out. A lot of the other runners are like, that's weird. She's not even sweating. She doesn't have huge leg muscles. This is kind of fishy. And then that's when everything about her story kind of just starts to break down. And at this point, a lady who helped her from the subway during the New York Marathon comes out and says that she was on the subway the whole time in New York and that she never even ran the New York Marathon. And she didn't have the leg injury. So people start investigating the Boston Marathon then. And basically the person who finished second, I think it was Jeanette Garreau, said that she never even saw her pass her. So unless she's in first the entire race, which she wasn't, then you can't just like pass somebody.
Right.
So it's basically her medal was taken away from her, and to her dying day, she never admitted that she didn't run the marathon.
Oh no.
But she didn't run the marathon.
It's like it's not like some nasty rumors.
No. There's no footage of her ever completing either marathon except for like the last half a mile.
But that is what everyone focuses on.
For sure. But with like, obviously we know how widely televised, like there's like 6 marathons in the world that are kind of like the big marathons. There's like Chicago, Boston, New York,
right.
And then London, Paris, and I can't remember the last one. But basically those are like the running events that if you're a marathon runner, that's what you do.
I mean, I gotta say, they can't have been too much of a spectacle if someone came in first and no one realized that she had just come in the last mile. Like when people tune into these things, they just show up for the last mile. Is that the exciting part of it? I mean, I don't expect you to run along it, and there's no drone footage from ahead. So I guess it's kind of hard to follow.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, and in 1980 too, you're not going to have the drones. You're not going to have that. So it's kind of just like you get volunteer camera crews along the way that they mark this point, they mark this point, they mark this point.
And she's so publicized because
Exactly.
she has this what was it, brain cancer?
That's what I was just about to say.
No.
So
No.
she made up the story of her dying with brain cancer because she missed the deadline to apply for the New York Marathon. And she was like, oh, I want to be able to run this marathon.
Except not
run the marathon. I'd rather take the subway. So she didn't have brain cancer, the brain injury. And she didn't have a leg injury. She just took the subway. And then she did the same thing pretty much in Boston. She just never ran it, and she hopped out of a busy crowded area. 2 years later, so for the 2 years after, she basically makes a big to-do out of it, and she says like, "Oh, I want to do it again. I still have the medal, but I'm not going to show you because I don't want someone to take it off me in public. So I'm just going to run the marathon again, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong." But before the marathon, the day of, she's arrested for laundering $60,000 from her real estate agent company that she works for, because all of her coworkers were like, oh, weird, she's living such a lavish lifestyle. So she was stealing from her company to go on top of the lying about winning marathons and having a traumatic brain injury.
There's layers to this.
Yeah. So apparently to her dying day, she denied not running the marathon.
Well, it sounds like she's a career scam artist.
Exactly. And that's kind of like...
And that's something that she did complete. So...
Yeah, she was good at that.
I mean, like, think about, like, you'd have to time that marathon so well to jump out at the last mile.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of thought would have to go into that, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you jump out when you're in first, like... How is no one going to notice
How is no one
You'd have to
noticing
jump out
this?
at the perfect moment.
Yeah, and you're so publicized. I mean, like, in the first part where you shouldn't ever lie about having brain cancer.
Yeah, for sure.
Bureaucracy sucks. And you know what? If you're a little late for the application deadline,
run it next year.
Well, A, she should have ran it next year.
Yeah.
But B, they should have just let her without this ridiculous excuse. She wants to run, let her run.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, she was born in the 1950s, so at the time of like the 1979 marathon, she was 23.
Although these marathons are bigger, right? Like, these marathons have like a cutoff, like, qualifier for it. Right?
Yeah, so the New York qualifier like gets you to the Boston one, and that's why she needed to do the New York marathon to get to the Boston one. So I don't know if the Boston marathon was kind of like her end goal, and that's why she lied about the New York one,
right?
So she could eventually win the Boston
and
one.
Just to be clear, she did not run the New York one,
no
qualifier.
There's many witnesses, including the lady who helped her from the subway to the end goal, that saw her on the subway for almost the entirety of the New York marathon.
But we're just going to let that go and let her run a whole nother marathon.
Yeah.
Before we start to crack down on this. And then she's a scam artist in her job too.
Yeah. So really the kind of the takeaway from this is like, sports are crazy, and I guess you can't trust everyone going into it. I don't know. I honestly just didn't believe this story.
It does kind of make you think, like, if she was able to get away with this for a whole year, right? Because I assume you ran the New York one, and then next year you ran Boston.
Yeah, it's like 6 months later, which is kind of like, that was where the questioning started, was that the New York Marathon was like 6 months before the Boston Marathon.
Right.
And she had like a 25-minute improvement on her time, which is like crazy.
Absolutely.
Especially when you don't even know what interval training is.
Yeah, you're lucky to shave a couple minutes off that.
Yeah.
Even in a couple seconds.
Yeah.
And that is baffling.
Yeah.
Like, it actually makes you kind of question throughout history, like, all these other great sport feats that weren't filmed, you know? Not bringing up Jessie Owens or my water polo match, but like other things that, like, they just didn't have the technology to really review carefully.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, it doesn't relate to your last story, but like you said, the first marathon runner, that's obviously not filmed.
No.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Some historian from ancient. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
we'll
for sure.
Let's put the brakes on
Yeah.
that one.
Don't want to jump ahead for you. Don't want to skip your next story anyway.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, really unbelievable, and kind of shows what people will really go to get some success out of sports, and how to make a crazy sports story. How to get some fame. 15 minutes of fame. That's...
Yeah. Well, she was hooked on it, and she's surprisingly good at it.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to say that.
2 marathons, yeah.
It's not a good thing, but
no.
Like, she fooled them.
Yeah, that was really...
Yeah. Okay. Anything else about that, or...
I don't think so. I'm kind of curious to know where you're going to go from this.
Well, so we just talked about someone who won a medal that she didn't deserve with no shame, it sounds like. Took that to her death. No shame at all. This guy's quite the opposite. This is a South Korean boxer who competed in the 1988 Olympics, and he is ashamed of his gold medal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can't say I can tell anyone, think of anyone else who would do that.
Yeah, exactly. But you're going to see why in a second. Have you ever heard of Roy Jones Jr.?
Yes. I'm not a huge boxing fan, but honestly, I'm probably a bigger fan of his music than his...
We're definitely going to put a clip in there. You will not win, 'cause I will not move. Can't be touched, can't be stopped, can't be moved, can't be rocked.
He can't be touched.
Yeah, so brief rap career, but he's a very prominent boxer, like probably the most dominant boxer in the 90s, maybe aside from Mike Tyson. This guy won... Out of his whole career, he won 66 matches and only lost 7. 47 of them were knockouts. So he's representing the United States. He's 19 years old. He hasn't really achieved his legendary status right yet, but he has got skills. And then we have our South Korean boxer, whose name is Park Si-hoon.
Okay.
And Park is light. He's agile. This is the lightweight division, by the way. So he's light, he's agile. He can't really throw punches as hard as some other people, but he is very capable. They end up in the gold medal match together. And, Roy Jones ends up tagging him with punches 86 times during this contest. No knockout.
How many rounds did it go?
You know what? I didn't write that one down, but... Suffice to say, 86 punches
Either way,
takes a few rounds.
If it's going like 10 rounds, 12 rounds.
Park is haney in there, but he only throws 32 punches and connects the whole time. And like I said, this guy does not have a heavy hand.
So he's like barely hanging in there in terms of...
Exactly.
Compared to the judges.
So what happens is they go to the judges, right? Because there's no knockout. So there's 5 judges, all from different countries. You got like Morocco, Italy, America... everywhere but South Korea. And the judges rule in favor of Park Si-hoon, who had a 1/3 of the punches thrown that Tyson did. They weren't very heavy.
Roy Jones, you mean?
Roy Jones, yeah. Sorry, Roy Jones Jr. By the way, Roy Jones Jr., I just recently heard, is set up a fight with Mike Tyson. These guys are 2 really old guys. But yeah, they've set that up recently. So.
Well, Roy Jones was actually recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was kind of, I think he brought this up, and like he basically, the only thing I remember about it really was that like he was motivated and like beyond the point of pissed, and like just right back in the gym after that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would be too, because if Park Si-hoon won that, I'd want to tear someone's head off, probably. Like that was a gold stolen from him. An Italian commentator announcer actually went up to the judges table and started berating them so aggressively that he had to be thrown out after the ruling was finished.
An Italian
Announcer, so
announcer.
You maybe think he's impartial at this point.
But yeah,
American coach was also upset, but American coach is going to go for his guy.
That's gonna make sense.
Yeah. Another impartial, well, sort of impartial person, apparently as I think his name's Aldo Leone, the referee. As he raises Park's hand, he looks over to Roy Jones and he's like, "I can't believe they are doing this to you." That's a quote from him. Park afterward admitted to Roy Jones, because Roy Jones goes to him and asks him,
Yeah.
"Do you think you won that fight?" And he said no. And then I guess Roy Jones thought that was cool. So he was like, "As long as you know."
Yeah.
And, no ill will toward him. But the crazy thing is, how did the judges rule this, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's in South Korea, but like none of the judges would be really South Korean.
Exactly.
Maybe
right?
one, but even that, you said none. So
Yeah. And like the outrage was so prominent that in 1997, so like a full 11 years later,
Mhm.
the Olympic Committee, the IOC, had to actually conduct an investigation, which most people said was, I think one of the quotes was, a dog and pony show. So basically, it was a sham. It didn't decide anything. It didn't find anything.
It's like, we're looking into it.
Right.
Yeah.
But some journalists looked into it, and they asked the judges about the ruling. One judge said that this one guy from Morocco, he said, "Well, I voted for the South Korean boxer because I assumed that no one else would vote for him, and I didn't want to embarrass the host country. I was expecting the score to be 4-1. I have no idea why the other judges voted in his favor." Keep in mind, by the way, over the judges, 3 of them voted for Park, 2 of them voted for Jones.
So it was just a big pity party for the South Koreans at the 1988 Olympics.
I mean, like, and then, but okay, then the journalism gets involved.
Yeah.
And the Stasi is still in Eastern Berlin.
Yeah.
The Stasi, like the Soviet
Yeah.
Union Stasi.
Yeah.
Like the secret police.
Mm-hmm.
They find records that say that in their logs, the South Koreans were witness bribing the other 2 judges with what they call golden nuggets.
Okay.
So I guess little pieces of gold.
So one guy felt bad, the other 2 were paid off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one guy
says he felt bad.
Says he felt bad.
Maybe he was just paid off too.
I wouldn't be super surprised if he just was not caught and he had a good excuse.
Yeah.
Anyway, this goes down as one of easily the most recognizable fixed games in the Olympics.
Upset, yeah, holy.
Yeah.
I mean, not even an upset. It didn't even really count. There's no legitimacy to it. So
yeah, Park Si-hoon, after admitting to Roy Jones, yeah, you should have won that. He all but retires from boxing. He goes to work at a school, spends many years, and then decades later, the South Korean Olympic Committee comes to him, and he becomes a coach. He's convinced to become a coach, and he says that his dream is to mold a South Korean boxer that can actually earn a gold. So pretty good guy.
So he's made like a post Olympic career of like admitting that it wasn't legit.
Yeah, I think he actually felt a little bit cheated too. I think he would have preferred the silver medal.
Mm-hmm. You'd feel better. You'd probably sleep better.
Right. Yeah. But it was the government. So what are you gonna do? But he does seem like a good guy, though, right? Park Si-hoon?
Yeah. I mean, like, you don't really know, like, maybe he's playing victim out of it. I mean, he got a gold medal, so you can't play victim that hard. But, like, you got to assume that, like, if there's that much bribery going on, that, like, maybe he had something to do with it.
Yeah, I can just see, like, in the Olympics and with all these international affairs going on, is it so crazy to think that the South Koreans did not inform their athlete that they were bribing the judges?
No,
like,
definitely
that's
not.
Just gonna throw him off. Why would you even involve him at that
point,
right?
I mean, obviously we know already that there's crazier things that happen in sports in terms of somebody just knowing about being paid off.
Right. Yeah, a lot of actually crazy things happened in that 1988 Olympics in South Korea. If you look it up, like the North Koreans had a huge conflict with the South Koreans and where it was.
Yeah.
I'll save that story for another day, though, I think.
Well, maybe we could throw a link in the in the description or something to see if someone's interested in doing a little further reading on Park Si-hoon. See if he's actually a good guy or something.
Yeah, I mean, my mind is set. You know, he recognized what happened and he fully admitted to it. And I mean, he can't, like, what is he gonna do? Give the gold medal to Roy Jones? Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, I don't even think Roy Jones would take that at that point. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't really know that much about his boxing career, but in terms of what I do know, I know like he's probably the one guy who's like gone through the most weight classes. Like he's won at the most levels.
Yeah, because you go like lightweight, welterweight, like he's just gaining weight.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like his diversity is like 70 pounds or 60 pounds between divisions.
That's not common for boxers either. Apparently they usually stay within their own division and
yeah, they just try and beat everybody else in the division to pulp.
You're talking about like a 19-year-old that goes like, you know, at 25 gains a bunch of weight, like muscle mass, maybe. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my story. You have what was it, mountain running?
Yeah, it's called fell running. This guy, kind of similar to Park Si-hoon, he is a good guy, but he doesn't really he didn't get the international recognition for his career because, like you said, nobody knows who fell running is, or what fell running is, I should say.
I don't.
Basically, we do actually have a clip of it, and I have a clip for you.
Let's see it.
Yeah, just a little 30-second clip just so you can kind of see what it is. But
you told me mountains were involved. But
basically, it's like, you know, when you're normally running up mountains, running up trails, like you have a set trail that you're supposed to traverse. With this, there is no trail. There's a start point and there's an end point.
Wow. Look at the altitude they're at.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the one thing is that you are running up high altitudes and running down. But basically, you're running up and down mountains without a set path.
This looks so dangerous. Like this guy's going down the hill, and it looks like one trip, and he is gonna tumble all the way down.
They really slow-mo it too to make it like look kind of epic.
Yeah, I mean, like they're not going very fast, but definitely you gotta be careful with that. Like you'd be so injury prone.
Exactly. Yeah, especially because there is no path. You're like at any point, like no one's been running on this before. There could be any rocks in the way. There could be little holes.
And I'm a big fan of trail running. You get like roots, you get rocks on the trail, but like there is a set trail. You're not like constantly trying to navigate your own route. It's pretty easy. Just follow the route, dodge what's in front of you. This requires a lot more brain power.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of have to watch your speed in terms of like the long run.
How far do they run?
So Joss Naylor, the guy who I'm talking about here, he's from the UK. He's British. And so he's known for like the longest fell running career. So he started at age 19. He had a knee surgery. He was kind of involved in like bike riding and stuff through his teenage years. And he realized that the cartilage in his knee was wearing down. So he tried to have surgery to repair that. And it didn't work. So he's got a bum knee. At the age of 22, his back starts to hurt because he's helping out his dad on the family farm. They farm like cattle and sheep.
So these injuries are not from fell running. No. They're
just like kind of like normal wear and tear of his day-to-day life.
Okay, and then he goes on for the longest career ever.
Right, yeah. So at 22, he has surgery on his back to remove 3 herniated discs. And it doesn't work either. So he's got a bad back. He's got a bad knee. And for some reason, 2 years after his second botched surgery, he decides, I'm going to get into fell running.
This is the sport for me.
Exactly. It's in the game. So he starts running. And at the age of 30, so 6 years after he starts running, that's when he wins his first race. And he kind of keeps winning races. And throughout the 1970s, he gets on to like the longer fell running. So in 1972, he ran 100 miles in 11 hours. Yeah, 100 miles in 11 hours.
100 miles in 11 hours.
And so the altitude was 25,000 feet, I believe. So 4,000 feet less than Mount Everest.
Oh, so it's kind of hard to breathe at that point then, right?
You're keeping track of like how high you're running. But yeah, exactly. So like, again, like it's over a long period of time. At the age of 50, so 1986, he runs 50 miles in 11 hours as well. So he's slowing down, but again, he's at the age of 50.
Well, he's slowed down almost in a half.
Yeah. While he's in his 50s, he decides that he's going to stop farming cattle because it's too much for him. And he said that he never got into bike riding in the UK because it's too bumpy and it's bad for him. So I don't think this guy has any sort of understanding about where his priorities are at in terms of health and fitness.
I gotta sell my farm because my knees are bum. My back is bad. I can't bike ride, which by the way is arguably like one of the best things you could do for your knees, I think, without like really wearing them down.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta get that out of the way.
Yeah.
That mountain I gotta run up
exactly
and run down.
So like kind of the one like notorious trail for fell running, it's called the Bob Graham round. It's basically you run up like the 6 highest peaks in England and Scotland. It's in like
Scotland Highlands.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's in like lake country England, and then it goes into the Scottish Highlands. And he was the 6th person in history to complete that, and he did it in 23 hours.
How old is he at this point?
This was in the 70s, so he's still like 35. I just backtracking a little bit here just to go over
this is the highlight of his career. This is his prime.
Yeah.
This is what I want to hear about.
75, he sets a 1975, I should say. He sets a record for the fastest time to complete the 100 miles in fell running. At the age of 70, he runs 50 miles up 6 peaks again. And that was in like 23 hours as well. So again, he's slowing down, but like his achievements are still insane. And again, he's been running for 40 years at this point.
It's over twice the length of a marathon in some cases. And it's a mountain.
Yeah.
Like what?
So like after the 70s, he kind of slowed down a little bit in terms of like the crazy long distance running, because once you set those records, you're kind of well known, at least in the UK. So he started up his own charity. It's the Brathay charity, where he just raises money for kids to have like better starts to their lives and have better home lives in terms of like what they can get for education and athletic equipment. And at the age of 80, he ran 30 miles in a day.
This guy's got passion.
Yeah.
That's what he has. Because like, obviously, like the farm is what tripped me up. Like selling the farm, selling your calves.
Yeah.
Because you can't take care of those anymore.
Well, he does still sheep farm. But again, that's kind of more like you're kind of entrusting the duties of it to your dog. So like you're in the field, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're shearing them. But he's moved on to charity now. He set all his records, and he still does go out for like the walks on his trails that he wants set records on.
Did you get any like I don't know, like life advice from this guy, or like tips, or like anything that like told me how to accomplish things like this?
Well, I don't know, for lack of a better word, I don't know if you should take this with a grain of salt or not. But basically the guy eats nothing but, in his words, rubbish. Don't know really what that means. I would guess our equivalent would be like potato chips and burgers and just crap.
Rubbish does mean trash, right?
Yeah, exactly. Macaroni, kind of like pastas and salads and stuff.
Okay.
And then he drinks stouts, a couple stouts a night. And he said that he finished when he was 80, he finished his 30-mile run with a couple glasses of red wine.
Man, you think he's exaggerating here? Like, or do you think he's really going home after a long day of training and just like getting the mac and cheese, getting the craft dinner on the pot, having a couple beers? Like, this doesn't seem like the behavior of a world-class athlete.
Well, going back to the Jessie Owens story, he smoked a pack a day for 35 years. Obviously, that would have been after the 1936 Olympics. Right. But I think it was kind of just like the times and wherever you grew up, that like it's just what you do.
Now that you mention it, yeah, I mean, like Babe Ruth, a whole bunch of guys were just like, some of them like they were in bad health.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe Babe Ruth wasn't pointing to where he was hitting a home run. Maybe he was just pointing to the hot dog guy out in the stands or something. Like it just wasn't the pinnacle of health. So I don't know. It's just the only thing he did say really about his training is that you want to focus on like the forest running, because the trails are a little bit beaten down, but you still get that up and down terrain. As someone who doesn't run, I can't really relate to it, but it doesn't really defeat how impressive it is to me.
Well, when you're training for a marathon, they do say don't run a marathon when you're training for a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's like kind of what he's saying, like don't go fell running to train for fell running.
Yeah.
You'll just get hurt. Save that for your moment and just kind of try to keep in okay shape and just pull. It seems like force of will at this point, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're training for a marathon right now, so maybe just get the stouts and get the macaroni and the rubbish, and
Yeah, I might have to switch up my whole train program based on this.
yeah, go out to the forest. You'll be good. But that's it for Joss Naylor. I guess if you're really interested in him, again, we'll try and post a link in the comments for you. And he's got a couple documentaries about him and stuff. Seems like a really interesting down to earth dude.
Yeah,
So-
imagine like a reporter like asking you, like as a world class athlete, what's the secret? Like, what do you eat? He's like, just rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. A super like just chill guy. And he doesn't take himself too seriously. So
Yeah,
no, it doesn't really defeat how impressive it is though.
I'd
It's
love to have
crazy.
a couple stouts with the guy.
I'm sure he would probably take you up on that if you're buying.
Maybe run a mountain, just one mountain.
Yeah,
you
just
know,
one.
for old time's sake.
Yeah, exactly. He's like 85 now. He'll do it.
All right. Well, anything else on that? Or...
No, I'm curious to see what you got on marathons though. Now we've
Exactly.
probably something a little flatter, but
Yeah, there's a lot of running involved in this.
Yeah.
Like
I feel bad as someone who doesn't run. Maybe I should get into it.
well, I mean, like look at these crazy stories, man. But yeah, you said Ashley would be a bit flatter, and honestly, I really, really doubt it because this is the first marathon runner ever. But there's a little bit of a twist on the story here. A lot of people have seen like the tweet or the Instagram post that details the story of how the marathon first began. Usually it includes, a runner ran from the city of Marathon to Athens to announce that the Persians were being pushed back and that we had won the war, and then he collapses and dies, and this is why we have the marathon. That runner is usually named Pheidippides in that version.
Mm-hmm.
But with the historical tools that we're working with, I think it's been lost in translation. It appears that Pheidippides had a much bigger feat and a much bigger role in the Greece versus Persian War in 460 BC.
So this is way back. This is
Yeah. So if you think like some guy running 26 miles of pure exhilaration that he's winning
Mhm.
and then dying from joy, as actually the many poems say written about it, you think that's impressive? Wait till you hear this. So this is before the Persians attack. The city of Athens gets word that Marathon is about to be charged by the Persians, the city of Marathon. And well, they had all these messengers that were called, I practiced this a bunch, might be a little bit of a bad pronunciation, but Hamur Odamas. And these were day-long runners. These were just messengers, built marathon runners, but for war. And what Pheidippides was tasked with upon hearing that the Persians were coming, the Greeks were looking to enlist help from Sparta, under the plea that, well, you can't let one of the oldest cities in the world be taken by the barbarians, which were referring to the Persians. So Pheidippides, tasked with this, runs all the way from Athens to Sparta. This is a span of 150 miles.
damn.
150
Can't
miles.
even comprehend that. Like just running that.
I actually really wish I had pulled out a calculator before this, because like 26 miles is a marathon, right?
Yeah.
So times that by however much, and you finally get 150 miles.
Yeah. Times by 6,
And
5.
What's more incredible about this is that he did it in a matter of 2 days. And so he gets to the Sparta. He's exhausted, and now he has to make a plea. Now he has to make a really convincing argument for why Sparta should help Athens in their time of need. So he successfully does, by actually the argument that I just put to you. Can't let it fall to the barbarians.
Yeah.
So they're like, yes, of course, we'll help you. Unfortunately, we're having a bit of a festival right now.
Come back in a couple days.
Yeah, come back and check on us in a little bit.
There's a great place back in Athens you can stay.
Not quite. Actually, so what is this called, actually? It's the Festival of Carnea, which essentially prevents them from entering war or the field of battle until the next full moon, which thankfully is only a week away. So it could be worse. 6 days away. Not too bad, right?
Yeah.
So Fay deputy's like, thank you so much. Amazing. He grabs a bite to eat, gets some food. He has a nap. And the historian, the ancient Greek historian that details this 50 years later, calls it a nap. And then he gets back on the road again because this message has got to get back to Athens so they can figure out their next move to proceed. Now they got to hold out for 6 days until Spartans get here, which, by the way, they have travel time too and a whole army. So it's a big thing. He has to get there right away to let them know.
Quick power nap, though. That's all he's got.
This is for military strategy. This is dire wartime. This is do or die. We could lose to the Persians if he doesn't get back in time. And if they make a wrong choice when it comes to military strategy. So he runs 150 miles back. And what's insane about this is that he runs it in 2 days once again. So he kept the same pace as on the way there, on the way back. You can't stop this guy. And actually, we were talking about diet for Josh Naylor.
Yeah.
I just want to put in, he was like eating like figs and like olives and like stuff like that.
So he's on like the Christian Bale diet from The Machinist. He's got like an apple and a coffee a day. That's about it.
Basically, yeah. I mean, like that was all the runners back then, the day-long runners, you know?
Yeah.
Military rations, give them what they need and nothing else. And
Okay.
away you go. On the way back, he starts hallucinating.
No shit.
Yeah, you could have probably seen that coming.
Yeah.
He hallucinates that a god from Greek mythology is speaking to him. Would you like to take a guess which one? For the 1 in a million chance you'll get, because there's a million.
Yeah, I mean, like Hermes is god of messengers, so that would be my guess.
That's a pretty good guess. I'll get, yeah, that's a really good guess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, wrong. It's actually the god Pan. And the reason it's the god Pan, as Pan so eloquently puts it, or the hallucination of Pan eloquently puts it, is that he had shown a lot of familiarity and niceties to Athens over the years, and they were not acknowledging him. So the god Pan piled onto the message from the Spartans and said, also let them know that if they don't, sacrifice their leftover food or pray to me, then they will lose this war. I
feel like Pan should probably like take it easy. Like this guy's like got the fate of the whole war on his back, and you're just giving him more information. Like, what if he forgets the first thing?
Yeah, this guy's running himself into the ground.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, miraculously, he remembers both these messages. And he gets back 4 days total for 300 miles. And he gets back, lets them know both messages. I don't know what their reaction to Pan was. I've just been like, whatever. Spartan's coming, great.
Yeah.
Anyway, this informs them, and they're able to mount a military strategy that I might as well get into because it's kind of interesting.
Sure.
They waited till the Persian horsemen had gone to bed. These are officers, so they have a nice little bedtime for themselves. And they killed all their horses to slow their attack to them. And Pheidippides, by the way, survived, despite what you may think. We don't really hear too much about him after, other than this legend. But he didn't die immediately upon entering, like the legend may lead you to believe. And then, so as the Persians are attacking Marathon, the Spartans get there. They're fighting off. Marathon's still under attack, but it looks like they're starting to win. They took him down like 7 Persian ships. Things are looking great.
Yeah.
And so they have to send a messenger. They have to send another Hemerodamus, day-long runner messenger back to Athens to tell them things are going great.
Yeah.
So legend has it this guy takes the message. We don't get his name. He runs. He's sometimes named Pheidippides, but it's not him.
Yeah.
According to anyone. And he gets there, and after running 26 miles from Marathon to Athens, 26 miles the length of a marathon, and his heart gives out as soon as he gets there. Poems say from the joy of the exhilarating message. But yeah, that's why they call it a marathon. And that's why we have marathons. It's commemorated in the Olympics, and that's what they drew on when they revitalized the Olympics in our modern era.
Huh. So I mean, like you have the ties between like ancient Greece, like that's where the Olympics started. So obviously you get that.
Yep.
But and also I can kind of see why Pheidippides would get the big clout for that, considering he ran like I said, like 6 times or 7 times greater distance than the actual marathon.
I am rather glad that he gets credit for this,
Yeah.
even if it is sort of underwhelming when you compare it to his actual journey.
Yeah.
And his actual role that was very influential in the war. I mean, like when you compare like a victory message going back to Athens and then, recruiting help from the Spartans, obviously one is quite a bit more valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously like it's like 1,000, 2,000 years before any of our other stories, but still like there's so much more in that sporting event, even if it wasn't a sporting event at the time, than just like whoever wins, because it's a war. There's so many lives on the line at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, if that's it, I'm just gonna take a moment to plug something here.
Yeah, go for it.
Unlike Pheidippides, I am not running 150 miles, but I am running 42 kilometers in a virtual marathon on May 2nd, raising money for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. I'm doing that with my girlfriend. So I'll put a link in the description. And if you'd like to donate, that would be fantastic. I think we might have hit our donation goal already, but please don't let that deter you. It's just the support's been really good so far. So
No,
check the description.
Even if it's not the 150 miles, it's a good cause. So
we'll get there.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Interestingly enough, I read a runner's blog, and you can do that race. Actually,
the actual race, like the 150 that he did.
Yeah. So they break it up for you though, because they're humane.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. But this one guy I was reading about did the diet that you would have if you were a Hemerodamus. He took that diet, and basically you have like to run like I think maybe like 50 miles. You have like 9 hours to do it, which is insane. Usually they give you like 11 or 12 for like those ultra runners. But it's like really, really quick qualifying. So you do that for like all day, like 10 hours. And then if you make it, you keep going. If you don't, you're eliminated. And then you go to the next leg of the journey very next day. And
Damn.
You eventually go all the way from Athens to Sparta. You can still do that exact route that Pheidippides did, which is pretty cool, eh?
And I'm sure you will probably hallucinate Pan on the way.
You're almost guaranteed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a cool story. I really like the ancient Greek kind of stories and how they tie into like the modern events that we have now. There's like so many links between that, especially with the Olympics.
Yeah, and you hear about all these like great Greek soldiers and heroes and commanders and Caesars, but some of the unsung heroes are these Hemerodamuses, these day-long runner messengers that got things around. Yeah. So like without them, the war effort would almost be impossible to coordinate.
Damn. No, that's cool. Especially because like they're not really given credit for it. So.
Yep. And and that's why we have marathons.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, obviously, like we have 6 completely different stories. A lot of them are running. But I mean, like each one kind of speaks different volumes about how impactful a sporting event can be, whether it be communism, whether it be national identity, whether it be like an idea of like race and overcoming oppression. I think it kind of really speaks to how impactful sports can be.
It's more than just a game. You can rewrite history with it. And, some people try to do that honorably and some not so honorably. We think about Hitler's influence in the games. We think about Ruiz. Yeah. Rosie Ruiz, who, seemed to kind of make the whole this marathon thing her scam. So it's more than just a game.
Yeah, I mean, she made her own fame. Jessie Owens made his own fame by choosing to go to the Olympics. Joss Naylor made his own. The Hemerodamuses, they obviously don't really get the respect now that they maybe do deserve, considering they're ultra runners. But I mean, hey, these stories are crazy, and we hope you've never heard of them. And did you have a favorite story out of the 6 of them?
Of all of them? Is it can I pick one of my own?
Oh yeah,
Is
for
that
sure.
rude?
I'll be a little hurt, but yeah.
I really like the first marathon runner.
Okay.
For the simple fact that, you know, not everyone remembers Faye Dipity's feats, but I've learned that even if you don't run 150 miles, if you just run 26 and maybe something dramatic happens to you near the end, like say dying, you can make your mark on history. And that's really inspiring for me.
Just die after your marathon. They'll remember you.
Exactly right. We remember Rosie Ruiz.
Yeah.
And she just scammed her way. So
I mean, yeah, she told everyone she was going to die, and that's how she made her mark. So
yeah, fake it till you make it.
Honestly, that she would probably be my favorite story out of the 6 of them, though.
It is pretty insane, the levels, because you really built her up like, oh, she did this and she overcame this, she overcame this, and she overcame this. There's like 4 levels.
Yeah.
And then, oh, she's laundering money. Oh, she's
yeah, she made her own adversity, and then she kind of just said,
she's lying about
it.
illness.
Yeah.
Oh, she's lying about her gold medal. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, even your blood in the water events, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We had a lot of crazy stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll have to tell us in the comments what you thought the most interesting story was to you. And I guess that's all for this week.
Yeah, and there's a lot of not very well known stories, but when we tell them here, I want you to just make sure that you take it with
a grain of salt.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.